Chapter 1, Prologue. The Icebox. Story, Fall at Equestria Commonwealth, by Crazyperson. Once upon a time in a magical land of Equestria. The barely audible hum of an ancient lighting in the walls coming up from daytime levels brought me out of my last wisp of sleep I was stubbornly clinging to. Back to another day in stable 111. Shift 3. Most ponies wouldn't even notice the slight hum as the automated lights went through their cycle of day and night. They kept all of us stable dwellers sane and on a 24-hour schedule, and most would get another hour or two of sleep. But their maintenance was part of my duties, so I heard them every day at 5:35 in the morning to the second. Assured yet again that the ones in my room were working anyway. I stared at the ceiling and let the rest of my faculties get up to speed. I was mentally going over what was on the to-do list for today when the realization hit me, like a foal on a hot swarming day. It was shift change day. That brought me a small smile and a sense of anticipation. First shift change day was always pleasant with the party and all the once-a-year extra work and change in routine. It was a small window to talk with different ponies from the incoming shift. A bit like the last day of school back before the war. My good mood was momentarily soured at that, remembering the world above before all those stupid fighting, before burying ourselves in this hole in the ground. Before the war. The sad reminder aside, shift change day really was quite a lot like what I remembered from the sweet final day of class of Miss Patient's first grade. The last I attended above ground. The excitement in the air was present just the same. Reminded of the world above, I wondered idly what it was like now. Was my house still there? My room? My shrouded stallion action figures? It still killed me. I love this kid. It still killed me. It got left behind when the alarms went off. Were there ponies up there at all anymore? Had the Bellfire wiped the map clean? If there was any ponies up there, what would they be like? All pointless questions, really. It had been 12 years since the bombs fell and the world ended. Well, 12 years for me anyway. 120 or so for whatever was still up there. Being one of those maintenance ponies who helped keep it all running and growing up safe behind the great gear door of stable 111. I had to give it to Stable Tech. This place had kept more than 1,000 of us alive and even comfortable more than 120 years since the end. The methods were unorthodox. And some annoyed me personally, but it had basically worked. Our social experiment goal in this stable had kept us in good shape, keeping 100 or so ponies safe, supplied and secure, while the other 90% slept down in the icebox. Was a lot easier than trying to cram all of us together down here. Wait a minute. Oh. All of us together down here awaken using resources. After today, I'd be down in the fridge myself. For the 13th time, when I awoke up again, it would be 130 years since that desperate run from the beautiful old home, our dingy gray current one. Oh, to our dingy gray current one. Finally, I stretched and groaned, rolled out and put up. Let's try it again. Finally, I stretched and groaned, rolling out. Finally, I stretched and groaned, rolling over and putting my hooves down on the cold, still floor, dashing for the bathroom to get ready for the day. Usually, I'd be lazy for a while, or get up slowly and use my free time before work on the rec room terminals while nobody was there. But shift change day was special. As I stood in the shower, letting the water rush over my charcoal black fur, using my magic to scrubbing the winged clock over the sword and shield cutie mark, I went over and revised what to do. Oh, I went over my revised to-do list for the day. Good God. I'm so terrible at this. I could get most of my actual work out of the way while everyone else was still waking up, so I would be able to enjoy most of my day. I quickly finished getting up. Wait. I quickly finished getting. Son of a gun. I quickly finish up getting. Okay. I quickly finish getting dried and groomed, struggling into my light blue stable barding, eyeing the yellow trim and the 111 across the back. Still fairly bright yellow, not yellow-green. More than clean enough. I spared a short glance at the red eyes in the mirror, and partly hidden by straight gray mane. Good enough, I grunted and left the room, heading for the atrium and the diner beyond. When I reached the heart of the stable, the out-of-the-ordinary activity, even this early reinforced the day was special. Usually I'd only see a pony or two from the night crew, or the rarely early riser, other than myself, the Earth Pony mare, smiling behind the counter of Stable's diner. Fast times. Good morning, kiddo. Happy shift change. The usual, or going to be adventurous for the occasion? The light green mare chuckled under a frizzy, graying, dark green mane, barely restrained by her mane net. My gosh. Happy shift change, Miss Ladle, I replied, levitating a still cooling muffin from the tray behind her and a coffee mug from the counter. Just the usual, please. Don't think my heart can take switching from apple muffin to oat on top of everything else today. The kindly mare, who has served me basically every meal for the last 12 years, snickered and rolled her eyes. Off to play on your computers again. Mug from still gleaming coffee maker. Oh, wait. Whoa. Where am I? Ah, there you are. I lost where I was. Off to play on your computers again. This morning fast? She asked as I trotted down the counter. I filled my mug with still gleaming coffee maker and little proud. It had been operating here for more than a century. I nodded towards the door leading down. Okay. I nodded towards the door leading down to the maintenance levels of the icebox below. Not today, Miss Ladle. I'll mix things up a little, actually. Get some work done before things get busy, seeing how adventurous I am. Good luck handling the diner over to Mr. Forks this year, I called, as I took a bite out of a delicious floating muffin and headed to the door. That crabby old goat ain't ever happy fast. You know that. We'll stay each other on. Oh, dang it. That crabby old goat ain't never happy fast. You know that. We'll stay off each other hooves well enough for the fine party for lunch, though. See you then, hun, she called over her shoulder before returning to her day, grabbing another tray of muffin goodness and sliding them into the oven. Part of the shift change was turning your job in the stable over to your replacement for the next shift, bringing them up to speed after they came from the Icebox. The changes of control over to the diner had been between Heaping Ladle and Hearty Forks had become legendary, and it showed their own part of the activities for the day I looked forward to. Some people. Behind the bureaucracy of a stable, what is going on with people these days? I can only imagine. Sometime later, I started crawling out of the service duct 23, wiggling my hind legs first towards the open panel of my last stop on my route for the morning, with some satisfaction. Occasionally, being smaller buck came in handy. Of course, this had been a lot easier than when I was doing this job a year I got my kitty mark, but still had it easier than the others in the maintenance crew. Like, "Hey, Fast, let me give you a hoof," I heard a friendly shout as my rear legs were grabbed just as they were exiting the deck. A strong grip yanked out into the hall to stare up in green eyes at the culprit. "Good morning, Grizz. Thanks. Happy shift change," I smirked, getting back on my host, pulling my Barding bag down from the quick exit. The brown earth pony stallion blanched a moment, shaking his shaggy dark purple mane briskly. And whitening his eyes. "Oh yeah, that's why everything was so busy on the way here. Oh my gosh. Thanks, White. Thanks. Guys, I want you to know that it's not the story, it's me. I'm literally fucking the story up. The brown earth pony stallion blanched a moment, shaking his shaggy, dark purple mane briskly, and his eyes widening. I swear I'm gonna get there eventually, guys. The brown earth pony stallion blanched a moment, shaking his shaggy, dark purple mane briskly and widening his eyes. "Oh yeah, that's why everything was so busy on the way here. I thought something seemed different." "Well, that's great. Another year down, huh?" He smiled happily at the realization. "Another year down," I agreed with a sigh. Started gathering up my tools. Had to put in that sigh. Grizzly Sands worked with me, and was only a couple years older than me. So we grew up together. Part of Shift 3. He was also pretty much my best friend. And of course, he probably had a good reason for showing up late. In such a good mood, thanks to his mare friends celebrating their last night before the freezer, whether he realized it or not. You should keep track of time a little better, Grizz. I expect you to just be showing up by the time I'm almost done. Wait, you should keep track of time a little better, Grizz. I expect you to just be showing up by the time I'm almost done. But you should know what day of the year it is, I snickered. Got a little distracted is all. Overslept, he shuffled. A blush. Bingo on the mare friend, then. I was happy for Grizz, and crystal shine. I thought it was currently. Their happiness just reminded me of one of those complaints. Oh gosh. Their happiness just reminded me of one of my complaints with how the stables was set up, though. Okay, that didn't make sense. What was that? Got a little distracted. Oh, that's why he was fucking up to me. I got a little distracted. Is all. Overslept. I think I got that part right, though. He shuffled and blushed. Bingo on the mare friend, then. I was happy for Grizz, and crystal shine I thought it was currently. Their happiness just reminded me of my complaint with how the stable's set up, though. I'm sure you did. And how is Crystal this morning? I chuckled as I levitated the panel back into place, closed it with my screwdriver, stowing the trusty tool in my saddlebags. Grizz gave a friendly noogie before he shoved me gently. Come on, give me a break. You gotta bust my flank all day, or help me out so we can celebrate. He smiled and tried to look pathetic. I hung my head in defeat and gestured for him to lead the way. Why do I always end up helping you out on your rounds? After already finishing mine first? I asked, playing my part of an old joke. Grizz grinned over his shoulder and gave his part. Duh, because you're fast, he laughed. Stupid as it was, that exchange is how we became friends near the end of my first year on the job. I had gotten my cutie mark and been assigned to the previous shift, spending nearly the entire first year on the job, trying to learn and not having any friends. I was a quick study, and even though he was my senior, I often ended up helping Grizz finish his work, simply because we worked near each other, and I noticed him lagging behind. Plus I tried to make friends, damn it. I'm just awkward at it. I know you're feeling. I'm gonna cry a little. Helping out was the best I could manage. After enough time together, I just asked that question one day and got a response, both of us cracking up. I'm fast, get it? Har har har. It was so stupid. It was funny. I managed to make a friend. Finding a mare friend was proving much more challenging, and awkward, and embarrassing, and disastrous. When you live with the same 100 or so ponies, and no one else, every pony knows every pony, and there are limited options within your age group. Why not go for an older mare? I'm just saying. I haven't really considered it giving. I really hadn't. Oh gosh, I'm terrible at this. I hadn't really considered it much growing up here in the stable since I was just a colt. Now it had started being a point of some concern, though, Since I was older and my peers were all pairing off, I had managed to horrifically burn a lot of bridges and had now mostly given up. There were population controls in place in the stable as part of our experiment anyway. According to the holotape the Overmare played us of the Vice President Scootaloo when we entered the stable 12 years ago, or 120 years ago rather, I worked out most of the implications myself last shift, when I was getting more desperate and figured those that don't naturally pair off might be moved around eventually, to expose them to other stallions and mares from the other ships. Births were carefully controlled in the stable to maintain the population limit. At this point, I just assumed that the Overmares would do something if it came to it eventually. Or may stumbled into something at random like my friendship with Grizz. I didn't share my friend's optimism though. Is he gonna try to bro you? Is he gonna sit there and try to hook you up with somebody random? Just, hey friend. Hey, is that girl over there? Go whisper in her ear, sweet nothings. I dare ya. Okay. Grizz bounced on his hooves excitedly ahead of me as we approached the first of his rounds. Oh, bro. Oh, no. We gotta do something this year. After we stop in at the party during lunch, I'll run to my room and grab an old Red Rider and find Sunset. Sarsaparilla. No, I'm kidding. I noticed and checked my pit book for Grizz. Alright. I thought it was alright. Oh, gosh. Oh, no. Alright's the word. Oh, damn it. I noted and checked my pit book for Grizz's next stop, since I loaded his work order along with mine every week. Alright. That sounds fun. But we're not getting too old for a marksman competition, are we? I mean, we're not foals anymore. Grizz waved my Grizz waved my grumbling way with an expansive gesture of his forearms. Bah! Of course not. I have to win back the shift change cup. Don't I? Besides, it's valuable practice. We can't be too soft when we go back to the surface. Who knows what it'll be like? So I couldn't help snorting at that. We weren't going to the surface anytime soon. Even only being awake, only a tenth of the time, this place was still designed for the long haul. If there were population controls, they expect us to have to be down here long enough. It was an issue. Still, I liked our silly shooting tournament with the BB gun down in the Icebox. And I was defending the champion after all. Okay, I'm going to assume you're a better shot than the rest. Right, practice doesn't hurt, and the cup does look lovely on my shelf. I think I'll keep it the next shift too, I snickered. With a nudge to the shoulder, Grizz pushed me forward to the junction box across the hall that was next on his list and grumbled, It'll look even better on my shelf next shift. Mark my words. Now let's get this done so we can collect. Oh, I can collect. Ha. With a shared laugh, we got to work together for the last time this shift, knocking out the rest of the work before lunch, leaving us with plenty of time to celebrate. We rushed back out through the service tunnels Grizz shouting greetings with our co-workers as we passed them, and giving me a wave or a nod from behind. Charismatic speech masters like Grizz were fascinating ponies. But I could never figure out how he did it. We scrambled to each other's locker room. Oh, we scrambled into our locker room. Oh, good gosh. Scrambled into our locker room. Getting cleaned up in record time and scrambling over each other to leave. Please let the show still be going on, I thought as I rounded the corner and galloped down the hall towards the atrium, when I could hear shouts. Yes, not too late. I cheered to myself as I came into view of the stable diner. Look at the conditions of my kitchen. I could only imagine the French. Do you see this filth? In the weather you come slop slinger? Oh my gosh. Cook Hardyfork screeched. Screeched as he paced around the stable diner kitchen, pointing from a fence to a fence as he spotted them. A ding on the counter, some grime under the sink, a piece of apple core that hadn't quite made it to the recycler bin, etc. The middle-aged orange unicorn stallion was some kind of fancy chef from the city before the war. Being a daily cook for these ponies of his shift had been an assault of his finely polished skills, as he often put it. To her credit, Heaping Ladle had her own forehead flat on the counter in front of her, head bowed and teeth gritted fiercely. Her pinprick golden eyes bore into the middle surface and pointedly did not look at all. Not look at all at the knives in front of her. Okay, so pointed did not look at the knives in front of her. Okay, so she didn't look at the knives that were in front of her. I'll tell you every year, Forks, we are not the only two using this kitchen. 8 other cooks use this kitchen. Quite frankly, second shift's cooks are a bit of a slob. But don't treat me like this when I wake up. Well, I don't treat him like this when I wake up. It has been more than 120 years, you pompous ass. She fumed, never looking up. Forks rounded on her across the room, a few strands of his slick back green mane flying loose, a pencil-thin mustache quivering. He tossed his loose fancy buck snack cake at Ladle, splattering against the cabinets before falling into the pink and green checkered floorboard. Dirtying his precious kitchen in the process. Exactly 120 years, and we still serve these carrot flavored splat, sugar frosted splat, balls of preservatives. I mean, I don't want to sit there and be doing French anymore. Please don't. Don't criticize me. He waved and tossed more and more of the delicious cakes around randomly. Ladle was slowly turning red. Finally, near the end of his part of the performance, Fork tossed his forelegs in the air and announced, "I cannot create here," before turning his head and walking in the freezer. Oh, walking into. Right now. Before turning his head into and walk in. Alright, hold on a second. This makes no sense to me. I cannot create here before turning to head into the walk-in freezer. Thank God. I figured it out eventually. Miss Ladle's hung in there like a champ. It didn't always get this far, but the last line always tore it. With a yell, she swept her forehooves across the table, dumping the contents on the tiled floor, notably a knife rack. When the sudden jump and spin, she bucked the heavy pots hanging from the rack and ceiling, sending them in a perfect arc. The first knocked Fork square in the rump and encouraged him into the freezer. The second one slammed into the heavy door closed behind him. When she landed from the surprisingly spry move for one of her years, she shook her head and gritted her teeth. That stallion grates my nerves more and more every shift change, she grumbled. With the show over, the gathered crowd gave an appreciative cheer before dispersing into the atrium to mingle with the ponies of the next shift. Grizz gave a nudge and nodded across the room before pelting off to the living quarters wing to grab our mighty weapon. I turned to follow where he had nodded, spotting the fiery yellow and orange-maned unicorn mare, with the sun setting over the ocean cutie mark that had indicated before rushing off. Ooh, who is this? Sunset Mist giggled and chatted up with a decent size of mares and a couple stallions from Shift 4. Great. I waited and watched for a few minutes, hoping they'd eventually break up and go talk with two others. But of course, they were enraptured with my fellow Shift 3 pony. It wouldn't be going anywhere, so I have to go there. Wonderful. Sunset actually lived in my neighborhood, not far from the stable before we came here. We played together on the green grass of our very own yard as foals. She was a year older than me, and so she had unfortunately decided on viewing me as a little brother, and I couldn't see her as an older sister. She was just too beautiful and kind for that. I had decided I could at least not push the issue. We had been friends practically since birth, and I had precious few of those. When I met Grizz, she had even insisted on approving of him before allowing it, hitting it off so well we actually became a trio of friends. She bridged the 2-year age gap between Grizz and I nicely. She worked at the Overmall's office now, addressing the concerns of the stable ponies, talking with them, and making sure morale was high. The once-a-year addition of new ponies gave her a chance to chat and catch up, building bridges, all with jazz. All with jazz. Thus, she was surrounded by strange ponies that I had to get their attention. I peeked from around the sickly potted plant, and stared, trying to figure out some kind of clever way to get her attention, while avoiding theirs. My surveillance was not as subtle as I hoped for, either. One of the mares from Shift 4 spotted me and turned to whisper in her friend, who promptly took a turn to look. My brain desperately engaged, and I ducked behind the plant, cursing. There was a burst of giggling, while the white unicorn mare, with a short yellow mane, who was whispered to tethered. Wow, that doesn't sound right to me. While the white unicorn mare with the short yellow mane, who was whispered to tethered. Sunset dear, I do believe you have a stalker behind that shrubbery. Ugh. I feel you, bro. I feel you more than you can possibly imagine. Oh no. Or am I? Oh, okay. A large blue stallion with a brown mane turned and started heading my way with a gruff look. Stalker, hey you! Get out from behind there, you bothering Miss Sunset. He stamped on the ground for effect, trying to impressed the golden mare, looking curiously around him. Totally defeated, I rose up and waved feebly. "Hi, Sunset," I squeaked before looking at her hose. In a yellow flash, she was past the stallion and tackled me in a hug. "Fast! There you are! I was just talking with these ladies from Shift 4 and wanted to introduce you." I could hear a fresh, but at least muffled, spat of giggles, along with whispers among the mares. The peek I got wasn't encouraging. Sunset shifted her death grip hug to hold my head against her chest, while she turned to glare at the imposing blue stallion who had frozen when he attempt at bravado had fallen apart. "Oh well, at least he's going down with me," I thought as she opened up with barrels. "Fess is a stalker. He's my very best full-hood friend from back home. So you should just leave him alone, Cobalt. He's like a little brother. He's just shy," she squeaked as her hug tightened and she planted a sloppy kiss on my head. Oh, this was just torture. I love it. The stallion walked back sheepishly, muttering apologies while struggling for air. Oh, I was struggling for air. Finally distracted Sunset from her sisterly affection enough to slip free, she laughed happily and nuzzled me before trotting back and starting to push me towards the group she had left, while I leaned against her and dug my hooves into the floor. "Come on, Fast. Just come over and talk with everyone. They're really nice ponies. Emerald there is in the hydroponics, and Satin works in the generators. She loves computer stuff too. Oh, and Violet works at the medical ward. She is so nice. I know you will just love her." Sunset prattled on, inch by inch, pushing me to the gaggle of ponies watching the tug of war with amusement. The unicorn mare kept my magic busy pushing against hers, so I couldn't get out of the way, and while I was occupied, she just kept brute forcing me along. She was getting dangerously close to social interaction. I was getting dangerously close to social interaction, and had to do something before this whole situation somehow became more embarrassing as it already was. "I just came to let you know Grizz and I were going down to the Icebox to do our thing together, if you wanted to come," I shouted and made a speedy, fake, but dodge around Sunset towards the safety as she paused a moment. "Oh, of course I'm going. I do every year, don't I? Just wait 1 second and come here before we," she replied, as I bolted as soon as she started to rope me in again. Despite her good intentions, I was just not a social butterfly. Maybe talking to one of those pretty fillies would be okay, but they're always traveled in miniature herds, and I completely lack the social skills to deal with numbers. Sunset was the only one I wanted to talk to. I'd see her soon when it was just the three of us. That was much better. I was the first one down to the Icebox. So I stood in the front of the large entryway and leaned against the railing of the catwalks, overlooking the massive room. There was a crowd Here was a crowd I can tolerate. Hundreds of ponies all around me, just safely frozen in stasis, sleeping in towering white boxes covered in tubes, tanks, and blinking Arcano-tech controls. The best kind of crowd is a frozen crowd, not gonna lie. Each box was numbered in red, showing the shift and number of occupant. I could feel a gentle hum of the generators powering. I could feel the gentle hum of the generators powering the devices through the rail at my hooves. I watched my breath fog in front of my muzzle with each exhale. 800 some odd ponies down here, soon be 900 when I join their slumber. First 12 times I had gone into the box and come back out again as the years rolled by. Fast times indeed. I could see the necessity of the system and I couldn't complain. It had kept me alive after all. It had kept me alive after all. I trusted the giant refrigerators to do their jobs. I worked on them after all. Doing what we were instructed to do, just as Vice President Scootaloo had said in Staple 1011 was essentially a small, old world town where every pony knew every pony, just like their home of Ponyville. I still hated it. Straight up. Because why not? Pretty soon, I'd be back in my box with the rest. Waiting another 10 years to be back in the world. When I was here, I was alone. While my Sun Pony Special could be in one of those boxes waiting for me. But maybe I'd never find her. I could be standing over her now. But I'd never know, because I'm shift 3, and now it was time for me to sleep again. At least in real small towns back out in the world, visitors might come, or you could leave, explore the world, and meet new ponies. I never told Sunset or Grizz, but I mainly liked the shooting tournament and usually won because I like shooting, to work out my frustration and anxiety going back in. The sounds of my friends chatting as they treaded down the chilly hall shook me out of my thoughts. I grabbed the box of targets I had carried down and waited. It waited. When they arrived, the greetings were exchanged. We walked somberly down to the nearest stairs off to the catwalks. Down to the foggy floor of the Icebox. Towards our waiting coffins. Wow, that's pretty dark. Kind of. Dark humor? There's a word for it. I can't remember. But you're the word. I can't remember. Stale, is it? Never mind. I'm just gonna keep going. They were standing out in the thin mist like tombstones before us in no time. The hatches already standing open, and a Shift 4 tech was further up the row, going over the systems, checking before they were put back into service. Shift 3, number 42. The short epitaph read on my hatch. I caressed the side of my coffin and felt the series of notches I had left in the vertical support. 12 little scratches carved in the back side where I knew where to check. Only no one else could see. Sunset trotted over to her own booth and cheerfully pulled out a marker, humming a catchy tune while she what was it? Humming a catchy little tune and started doodling. Sunset's coffin was unique. At least each year she had added to her doodles on the casing. Yeah, okay. The crude drawings at the bottom were from when she was a foal, while the talented works towards the top were quite professional. They were all pictures on the of the outside, of our neighborhood, of home. Sunset said she wanted happy, brimmed dreams of the world waiting for us when it was safe. So she made her pod happy and bright. I simply wanted to mark the years to be able to make sure it was the same pod every year. But I had to admit, looking at the colorful pod marked Shift 344 made me feel better. And I made sure I did all the maintenance on it so the pictures weren't damaged. Grizz simply gave the booth marked Shift 353 a loving pat and murmured to it, "Ready for another ride, old girl? Of course you are. Smooth sailing on calm seas." This guy's way too calm for all this. He nodded and, satisfied with himself, trotted over to the box full of bottles and cans I had brought, taking out the oddly dented can, sprayed painted gold. All three of our names were printed in rough letters below the word Shift Change Cup. They were covered in glitter. A varying of stickers and rhinestones were sloppily glued to the surface, and a series of scratches were under the names. My name had 5 scratches below it, the same as Grizz's sprawled signature, while Sunset's signature had claimed the last 2 scratch marks. This year was the tiebreaker, unless Sunset pulled an upset, which was always possible. Once the targets were set up on the aisle between our pods, the lone pony servicing the last of our Shift 3 pods, an old dark purple stallion with the fading yellow mane, gave us an eye, grumbling, "Every year you kids do this, and every year I tell you to be careful. This is sensitive equipment." I nodded to the old buck and tried to look respectful. "I know, Sprockets, but it's just a BB gun, and the cans are all on the aisle, nowhere near the pods. It'll be fine just this year. Come on, it's tradition now, sir." Sprockets grunted and went back beneath the pod he was currently working on. "So you say, Fast, but don't come crying to me when something goes wrong. Duly noted, sir." I just imagine he's giving a little salute. I answered as I watched Grizz pull our blue-stilled beauty from his saddlebags, avidly. The Red Rider BB gun was our treasured weapon. Well, Grizz's, since he actually grabbed it before running into the stable. Unlike my poor shrouded stallion figure, there was a real shortage of toys in the stable. They thought of the survival first and foremost, so the foals who made it inside just had to wait. Just had what they brought with them. The BB gun was the greatest of these toys in 111, and we guarded it jealously, only using some of the remaining shots once a shift, before we went back under. Sunset pranced towards Grizz and danced in circles around him, holding her hose out in a gimme gesture, fluttering her eyelashes over her big green eyes. "Yep, just a little brother over here. Nothing to see. I knew she had a crush on Grizz, and I actually did hope once he was done showing his oaths, he would notice her. They would be good together. But Grizz saw her the way she saw me. I guess turnabouts was fair play. Still, I have to do something to break the stalemate someday. Maybe next shift. For now, she simply smiled sweetly and waited for her turn. It's my gun, you know. Don't see why you always get to be first. You. Oh my gosh. It's my gun, you know. Don't see why you always get to go first, girl, he muttered while loading the weapon and inspecting it before inevitably giving it to her. I always get to go first, silly. She littered as she booped his nose. Besides, it usually ends up between you and Fast these days. Why would I go last and come in last? Come on, give me. She jumped and bounced on her hooves, waiting. Finally, Grizz grumbled and held the BB gun out, enveloped in her golden magic. As she crouched and started taking aim. And no sets, Sunset. You know, it's against the rules now. I reminded her gently as she rolled her eyes and huffed. The Sable Tech assisted targeting system was a great convenience. We allowed use of it in the early tournaments to help learn to use it. But in the later tournaments, we had focused on skill. So no more sats. Sunset had argued to keep it as the equalizer, but Grizz and I kept wanting to complete without any cheats. Skills against skills. Who says I need it? She exclaimed, her words punctured by a huff of air from the gun. Who says I need it? As the rattle of a can falling. Oh, she actually hit one. Not saying she couldn't, but I'm saying usually when I yell and shoot, I miss completely. Got to be focused. Spite shooting just never gets me nowhere. She raised her forehoof in a little snort of victory before moving on to the next target. Pifting, the shots came fairly quickly. And her accuracy had improved. She ended up with 8 out of 10, with the last two being close. Sunset leapt forward from her crouch and whooped, happy with her performance, before swinging the Red Rider over to Grizz. Beat that! She exclaimed happily before bounding over to reset the targets. Coming back towards me with his turn. Oh, to watch his turn. Okay. Fine, I will. Fine, I will, little girl. Little lady. Grizz snorted, laying flat on the ground to brace the BB gun against his foreleg before in the firing stance. How he managed to be as good as me without magic was beyond me. But he did. Grizz's shots came in rapid succession, a flurry of movement and precision, as the cans came tumbling down. 6, 7, 8, 9, and nothing. Grizz, damn it, was going for a perfect score and the speed record. Guess you got a chance there, Fast. As long as you get a 10 out of 10, he chuckled as he hoofed the gun over and went to reset the targets. This would be a challenge. A perfect score to win. Nothing else would do. Not that I hadn't done it before, but the pressure was on now. Grizz sauntered back smugly and waved a hoof towards the waiting targets. You may fire when ready, Gridley. He snickered. I crouched into a firing stance, holding the gun in my blue magic, focusing on the first target intensely, carefully controlling my breathing, waiting for the right moment. Almost. Wait! Sunset shouted suddenly, making me jump and nearly misfire. Extra prize this year, she exclaimed, hugging herself and dancing about in glee. Sunset, you nearly made me miss, I yelped at her, which is, he kind of needs to move that as those quotation marks. The golden mare waved a hoof dismissively and smiled with lidded eyes. Oh, hush. It wouldn't have counted anyway. Besides, this is good. Since I'm out already, I volunteered to add a... I'm out already. I volunteered to add a prize this year. She smirked with a slight blush and giggled. A kiss for the champion. How's that? She stretched up on her hind legs and posed majestically, looking from me to Grizz and back demurely? I can't pronounce that word. Both of us blanked out for a moment and turned red. Our poor brains tried to process this turn of events, but couldn't work it out. Well, perfect score equals kiss. Then it would all break apart in my head again. Love this. Grizz regained his senses first, smiling, while keeping some fairly rosy cheeks himself. Well, that's fine by me. Looks like I'll win. No way Fast can pull it off now. You done broke his brain, darling. If you wanted a kiss, you could have just asked and let I'm having a chance. He chuckled and rubbed his head together, already celebrating his victory. Okay, that actually annoyed me a little. She wouldn't have done this just as an excuse to kiss Grizz, would she? I didn't think so, but the joke was bothersome. Plus, it's not like I couldn't win. I wasn't that rattled. Really, I wasn't. I swear. Matter of fact, I still pulled this off. I could do it, couldn't I? Don't count your chickens, big shot. He'll get it back together again fast enough. He always does. Maybe it'll make him nervous. She smiled and sat down, looking at me with wide eyes of patience, caring and letting her fiery orange mane spill down her shoulders and frame her face. And maybe it'll make him motivated. And with that, she winked and turned from us both to watch the targets. Grizz shrugged and turned as well, waiting to see what happened, not needing to get in my head anymore. I closed my eyes and focused on breathing and cleared my mind of everything not important. Sunset watched to see if I was motivated. No tin can would survive. The first shot rang out, and a strong hit. Flying across the floor as the BB hit right where I wanted. I moved on to the next in no hurry, and it fell. Then the next, and the next. 8 cans went down perfectly, but the 9th sounded off and wobbled before dropping. I stopped and took a breath, staring at the last target. All tied up now, smarty. Sunset stuck her tongue out at Grizz and wiggled in her seat. I suppose if he doesn't make this one, I could give the prize to both of you, since you both can split the trophy, and I could give it to neither of you. Or I could give it to neither of you. She chatted to herself, looking up at the catwalks above. Oh no, I wasn't losing this, and I wasn't sharing it. I was winning. I was winning this. Now, now, I was sorely tempted to sneak a quick use of sats, but that wouldn't be right. I wanted to win this, yes, but it wasn't. But win is fair. Oh, win it fair. I closed my eyes, whispering a quick prayer to the goddess Celestia. Oh, the goddesses, Celestia, calm my heart. Luna, guide my hopes. Everything fell away. Like I had entered sats anyway. But I hadn't activated the waiting spell. I was just calm in the zone. The barrel rose towards my target. I could see it clearly. Everything fell away. Where am I? I was just calm in the zone and the barrel rose towards my target. I could see it clearly. I had this. This shot was perfection. I may never attain again. I had to enjoy it. With a soft hiss of compressed air, my arrow was loosed, and all I could do was watch. I could actually see the tiny BB as it arced its flight through its flight, shining with its own light as time crept forward. Ting! It hit. I could see a contact on the side of the can before it, at instant time, seemed to completely freeze. The world held its breath. Countless possibilities seemed to fold out in front of me, all branching from the path of the lone BB. Finally, it jerked in motion again. The BB could see so clearly disappeared in a blur and ricocheted off the can. Started to wobble, circle on its edge, apparently sneaked out. And apparently streaked right for old Sprocket's flanks, judging by the yelp I vaguely heard. That didn't matter. The can had kept wobbling, almost. The can kept wobbling, almost. I caught a blur of motion from somewhere. I heard the yell, but it still didn't matter. Grizz was chewing his hooves, watching this slowly spun and wobble. Sunset followed it, with wide eyes, biting her lip and prancing in place. I held my breath while getting the distant message from my peripheral vision that the blur I saw was following an arc. Just as I heard a crash of something went white. When my vision started to clear, the first thing I looked for was the blasted can. Where has it gone? I did it. The target was down. Actually, all the cans were down. Come to think of it, there were a decent puff of smoke and sparks from one of the pods. Oh shit. Sunset and Grizz were shaking their heads, clearing their vision, as Sprockets came limping out of the next aisle, rubbing his flank and sputtering. I told you kids to be careful. Look at this. What was it? Look at this. Pod's fried. It'll take weeks to fix. And it's leaking flex. Great. Now we gotta do a hazard material cleanup. Then replace the damn stuff. Are you happy, Fast Times? I looked up sheepishly. Holding the sagging gun loosely in my magic, looking up at the old stallion from my bowed head. You didn't happen to see if the last can fell before the blast, did you, Sprockets? The old technician sputtered, and fumed a moment while Sunset smiled sweetly and her hose to her mouth and Griff kept staring at where the last target had been. Yeah. You seen it, Gramps? Come on, it's important. Did it fall or not? Sprocket looked like he was about to blow a gasket. No, I didn't see it, and I didn't care. You fools have wrecked a machine. This is the Ship 3 pod, no less. Whoever belongs to number 42 is going to have a rough surprise thanks to you. Wait, what? 42? I dropped the Red Rider and galloped to the steaming pony to the smoking remains of my coffin. The back panel was off and wrenched. The back panel was off. The wrench Sprock had been using when the Magic BB shot him, and the flank was sticking out on the ruined remains of its innards. Sprocket was right. This could take weeks to fix, and I was due to use my pod today. Well, sir, at least it's my own pod I wrecked, so I guess I'm the one in for a surprise. What do you know? What do you do now? What do I do now? Oh gosh. I suck at reading so bad. I groaned and stared at it. Sprocket stopped and visibly calmed a bit, looking at me seriously with stern orange eyes. Yours, huh? Well, I guess that's justice for you. Alright, young buck. We'll get it sorted out. You'll stay with your shift, no worries. Just have to put you in to one of the extras. You'll be back in normal one after the next shift, I guess. A spare? Not number 42? I knew there were extra pods for each shift. A little bit of leeway in population control, but one I had never needed before. My breathing started quickening, and my pulse pounded in my head, in my temples. 10 years had in some strange pod. Grizz kept staring at where the target had been with the frustrated look, while Sunset looked apologetic and caring as she trotted over and put a hover on my shoulder. It'll be alright, Fast. It was just a freak accident. And another pod will be just as good. You can use mine. I'll use the spare if you want, since she consults soothingly. But I shook my head to clear the thought of 10 years in Sunset's pod. It smelled like her. No, bad. It's okay, Sunset. I did it. It was my pod. I knew Sprocket was there. But I was just too focused on winning. The spare is fine, really. I shrugged. I still wish I knew if I could tell if the can fell or not, though. Sprockets came up and ruffled my grain mane with his horn. Above my horn. Okay. There you go, lad. It's no big deal, after all. Oh, at all. I'll show it to you if you like. Have to get it serviced and ready. She's over in the storeroom 3 if you want to help out. It's the least I can do, sir, I replied apologetically. Besides, I want to anyway. You guys go ahead back up and I'll clean up here, okay? I looked over to my friends and nodded. But what about the dang tournament? Grizz shouted, picking up the Red Rider and stowing it in a saddlebag. Who won? He stamped on the floor and snorted. I guess it's a tie then. You take the cup for the first half and the next shift, Grizz, and I'll take it for the next half. I shrugged, waving to my poor, cold, still coffin. A tie? Then I get to choose what to do. Yay! Sunset squealed and pulled pulled a small tube of from her red barding. Oh God! Why can I talk? A tie. I get to choose what to do. Yay! Sunset squeaked and pulled a small tube from her barding pockets, popping the top of the tube with ruby lipstick and applying it seductively as she swayed forward. My heart started hammering as I broke out in a sweat as she sauntered towards us. Then my spirits fell as she turned towards Grizz with a smile on her now painted lips. Just as she closed in, she made a dramatic turn and lunged towards Grizz's pod, planting a huge wet-sounding kiss on the middle casing. Stepping back to admire her handiwork, the perfect puckered red lip print now adorned the front panel of the machine under right under 53. Oh my gosh. Dyslexia, stop hurting me. The red of the print even matched the red letters. There's your kiss, Grizz. To tuck you in and stay with you. She smiled widely and rubbed her lips clean with her hoof. Teetering and trotting back to me and booping my nose. Yours will have to wait until your replacement pod, I guess fast. But the time means you both get one. Good job. I blushed and shuffled my forelegs in front of me until she laughed and trotted off. Grizz was left scratching his mane and looking from the new pod decoration to where the last target had stood, as he raised his hooves in agitation and gave up. Guess it's a tie. Not so bad then, huh, buddy? I guess it's a tie. Not too bad, huh? Then, buddy. He said as he cuffed me on my shoulder and trotted after her. He picked up the shift change cup on his way out and trotted over to his shouted over his shoulder, see you up there later. Say hi to your folks for me." With that, they were gone, leaving just me and the old technician in a big mess. Sprockets have taken up grousing to himself again as we walked down the long aisle of empty 3 pods in the storeroom on the far wall. When we reached the secure door, Sprocket raised his pip back and started tapping. A moment later, the terminal by the door beeped, and the door slid open. Password's winter wrap-up, just in case you were wondering. You'll need it to get into it this evening. Now, come on, right this way, he explained as the lights in the room hummed to life, illuminating 2 more rows of stasis pods. 4 in the row closest to the door had 5 in the other. Sprockets turned and led me down the row to the side. To the side where the service and test bay was built into the recess. The tall white box was hooked up, humming. Everything looked green and ready to go. Good to go. Stenciled across the face of the machine below the small porthole was Shift 3, number 101. Will I be here the whole time? I asked dubiously. Not that it mattered, really, but I like being close to my friends and family. Seeing them when I woke up, sleeping alone in a corner of the small dark room, seemed scary. Sprocket shook his head and patted me on the back consolingly. "Of course not, boy. You'll be up and about. Have you moved Have you moved to your regular spot before long? I get long. Gosh darn it. Sprocket shook his head and patted me on the back consolingly. Of course not, boy. I'll be up and about. Having you moved to your regular spot before long once I get a handle on things this shift. You'll wake up just like normal, surrounded by by the same ponies. You always are in the same place, just a different number on the pods is different. That's all. You know how these things work. Independently, power supply could manage a century or so. So we've got the equipment to move these things around where we want. Won't be a thing to put you back in place. The old stallion said, was pleasant and comforting, especially considering the extra work I made for him. So I smiled and nodded thankfully. With a grin, he leaned into the pod while I looked at the open lid with trepidation, staring at the red 101. Here, suppose I should clean it out first. I know where Shift 3's maintenance head hides his stash. You see? Sprocket laughed as he came back out of the pod holding a couple of beers in his mouth. With a flick of his head, he tossed one over, which I scrambled to catch with my magic in time. The old earth pony trotted to the nearby workbench and popped the top on the edge of the counter, while I paused and looked at the beverage and back at Sprockets. He sighed and waved his hoof while taking a pull on the bottle, gasping with satisfaction as he finished. Well, go on if you want. I'm not your mama, boy. You're a young buck, but you still not a colt anymore. Seating his point, I twisted the cap on my in my magic and took a drink. I was technically still underage for drinking, but not by much. And this was not so bad. Plus, it was only polite. I only took a drink from the foamy beverage and fought with the taste in my mouth a moment. Oh, it was a struggle, but I was winning when Sprockets opened his mouth. Besides, a guy like that, I suggest taking up a drink out of principle. That filly's a firecracker. You and your friends next shift should be interesting, he chuckled wearily as I ejected a spray of foam in a fit of coughing. I love it. What? Don't be, I choked to reply, but he just rolled his eyes and took another pull of his beer while I sputtered and tried to deny the obvious. Don't even bother, kid. I'm an old stallion, not a dumb one. Besides, I'm not even on your shift, so no worries about gossip. I just been keeping an eye on on you three and your little tournament all these years. That girlies is nothing but a heartache for some pony. Totally worth it too. He cocked an eyebrow, and I flushed and looked away. I took a long drink of the beer despite the taste, just to have something to do. It wasn't quite as bad as the second try. But with a belch, he polished off his own and bucked it into the trash bin behind him. Well, let's get to it. This'll be the most recently serviced spare, so she'll be in tip top. But we both know the routine. No chances, right? I nodded and started floating my tools out of my saddlebags, getting to work. Besides the old tech. Work to occupy our minds and our mouths to welcome. Our mouths was welcome now. I really didn't want to take any chances with the strange pod with my old 42 down. with a slow, only slightly weaving gant and a pleasant buzz in my head, I walked back up to the atrium after an hour or so with sprockets. No matter how I tried, I couldn't find anything wrong with 101. I didn't like it, but it was in perfect condition and been calibrated just like my own 42. The atrium was even more full with ponies now. Everyone from shift 4 must be awake and up by now. The party was already winding down, and there were still some pieces of cake and some dregs of punch. I grabbed a slice of cake and munched on it as I walked to the living quarters wing. I passed my own door, reminding myself to give the place one more once-over before I went under. I lost a pretty good holotape game 1 year during shift change, and never forgot it. Right now, though, I went to the next door down from my own room I had been given once my cutie mark had been. Wait a minute. Let me try that again. Right now, though, I went to the next door down from my own room. I had been given once my cutie mark. I got my cutie mark and back to the quarters of my family, walking through the door as I slid up at the touch of my button. Slid up at the touch of my touch of the button. The rustle of paper waited. My father, olden times. He sounds like a dad joke. I'm just saying. Looked up from the book floating in his magic, waiting while my baby brother, Better, crawled around his playpen in the middle of the living room. Burbling, he saw me come in. My parents were one of the few so far in shift 3 that have been allowed a child born in the stable. Mom and Dad got an extra shift out of the Icebox while waiting for the little blue-gray foal with his black shock of mane, letting him get old enough to go to sleep safely in Mom's pod with her. I didn't get to see him as a newborn since I was already had my cutie mark and moved next door, but I loved the little guy when I first saw him last shift. I walked over and ruffled a little bit of his mane, standing straight up, listening to him giggle and roll around. You've been gone a while, son. Usually you give an extra time of shift change day to spend some with us. After all, Dad raised an eyebrow sardonically. That's a good word. Looking up over his book, hiding a slight smile. Yeah, I got a little held down in the icebox with sprockets. Sorry, Dad. I shuffled under his gaze. Even jokingly, the white stain could be intimidating. His purple eyes stared up in mock seriousness beneath his black mane. Yes, sunset came by to let us know. Fine friend you... Oh, that one, he nodded, setting his book aside, and as he sniffed the air a moment, leaning off the couch, he grabbed a piece of the hard candy bowl of the living room table. I take it Sprockets tried to make you feel better about the accident, huh? Don't let your mother smell that. I can't. It can't have been more than one, but she'll be displeased nonetheless. I could feel myself wince and took the candy without looking, stuffing it in my mouth and nodding before he tousled my mane, pushing my chin up to look back at him. You're old enough to make decisions like this on your own, so I won't say anything. I do expect you to make the right ones for yourself, though. The consequences for bad ones are going to start getting more severe once you're older. So keep that in mind, huh? I nodded and bucked up, looking him back in the eye without reservation. Right, Dad, I'll remember. Thanks for the advice and, being cool about it. He laughed, picking Better up with his magic and setting him down on his back, giving him a gentle bounce now and again as he squealed. Cool. Oh no, I just remembered is all. I just remember is all. He said, pointing to his grandfather, clock key mark as proof. What it's like to be your age, for one, and being the one to clean up after some of your more memorable mistakes as a whole for another. I can't help that way as much now, as it's up to you to deal with yourself, right? Finally, it's self-interest too. You're a mother. Olden, did someone come in? I did. I hear you talking in there. Is it fast? A mere question calling out from the old bedroom. Now the nursery she must be clearing out at the moment. Oh, my old bedroom. Now a nursery she must be clearing out at the moment. My father and I shared a look of panic as our eyes shrank in pinpricks before we both began looking out in terror. In desperation, I stuck my muzzle into the candy dish and started fiercely crunching the sweets, trying to disguise the smell of most of one beer. Dad suddenly gave a decent buck, and baby better was airborne, landing on my back, followed by an eye-watering smell. Sorry, boy. This will work better. Just happened. He whispered, turning. Oh gosh. He just launched the baby into the air to land on his back to cover the smell of alcohol. I love it. I love it. My father and I shared a look of panic. Oh, no, I got that. Just happened. He whispered, turning back in the short hallway as Mother peeked around the corner. Mom's crimson eyes got wide as she smiled warmly, flying across the room and tackled me in a hug. She was less a guided missile than usual, with baby better on my back anyway. She wrapped her light blue lavender wings around us both and cooed happily. There you are. I was worried we wouldn't get much time together at all before we went under. Since you seem to be so busy, my boy. The Pegasus mare slowly tightened her hold on my neck during the last sentence, expressing her displeasure with a hug that was cutting off my oxygen. Gah! Mom! Air! I gurgled. Better like the noises I was making and laughed happily. Oh, better, the kid. Oh gosh. Better like the noises I was making and laughed happily while Mom tickled him with her feathers. Yet was somehow simultaneously choking the life out of me. Finally, I prepared to meet Celestia and Luna. She let go and planted a kiss on my cheek, giving a little frown and staring at me with her face close to mine, her eyes boring into me, framed with her long violet mane. You've been a naughty boy, little colt, haven't you, Fast? She purred menacingly as her nose wrinkled. Sprockets is a bad influence. I'll deal with him later, though. She intoned as I prepared for the worst. With an aerial maneuver I was still amazed could be accomplished inside a small living room inside the stable, former Lieutenant Bright Skies Times spun three loops around me, grabbing Better and tossing him playfully towards the ceiling before breaking off. She bounced off at the wall and returned with a flip, putting her hind hose out and to slam me, sending me sailing across the living room to land on the couch. With a little wind, what little wind I had recovered was instantly knocked out again. With a fancy pirouette, she caught better as he came back down and hovered over me. Drinking beer is for grown-up ponies and cranky old stallions who are going to pay soon, my darling. Think of an example you're setting for better. She gasped in mock horror. Horror. I would think I wasn't the worst influence in the room here after all. Oh, after that. But I knew better than using logic. Mom was bona fide Pegasus soldier in the Equestrian army, and the only Pegasus in Stable 111. Needless to say, her areas of expertise were not diplomacy or military planning. She was retired when she got pregnant with me, and we all lived together back in a little house for 5 good years. Since service guaranteed our family a place in a stable, so when the bombs fell, she was in the stable with us, and was now Shift 3's head of security. Groaning, I sat up and rubbed my chest idly. It didn't hurt really. Mom would never hurt any of us. She just had no qualms letting us all know that the way she could do if she wanted. Being taught all the ways to use lethal force against zebras when you're 8 tends to skew your perspective of a bit in full school. But she was a soldier at heart and wanted her foals to be able to protect themselves. She hadn't trusted the stables or like it much. Too confining, she said, so she handled parts of my education herself. All this should have been enough to teach me trying to fool her was doomed from the start. She was trying, but trying was like a bit of a game for Dad and I. Occasionally, I think she would let us get away with it. Sorry, Mom, I wheezed, tried to look pitiful. Hardened warrior that she was weak for puppy eyes, at least. Her expression softened, and she fluttered down, nuzzling me as she bounced better in her hose. There's my good boy. Isn't that right, better? Yes, it is. Fast is silly, thinking he's smarter than Mama, isn't he? Lucky he's such a sweetie. Isn't it right? He is still a sweetie, isn't he? That nasty, wasty beer didn't change how he tastes, did it? Let's find out better. She cooed to my brother before tickling me on the couch and planting sloppy kisses all over my face, holding better up and to join in, who mostly laughed and drooled on me. Oh gosh, the cuteness is killing me. I rolled on my back trying to fend off the assault, but it was hopeless. Finally, she floated above the couch and held better up to her face, sniffing. Uh-oh, looks like my other boy isn't so sweet right now either. Can't have you go downstairs like that, can we? A frozen poopy diaper doesn't sound good at all, does it? Come on, my precious. She smiled and tossed him up, catching him before gliding down the hall to the nursery. I caught my breath lying there on the couch and wiped my face off with my sleeves. My father chuckled, patting my leg, and returned to his book. I felt truly happy at the moment. It might be 10 years before I saw my family again, but it wouldn't feel like it. It would be tomorrow for us, and we'd be together at 101. Oh, 111, not 101. It wasn't the life left behind in our little house, along with my toys. Damn, he's still salty about that. But it was a life, and it is not too bad at all. 100 ponies filed into the icebox and stood in front of their waiting pods, waiting patiently, looking up the smaller group assembled catwalks. I stood in front of 42, which at least looked intact for the shift change, but was of course ruined. But which of course was ruined. I looked behind me to see Mom and Dad and Better standing in front of their front of pods 40 and 41. Dad nodded silently while Mom fluttered above the ground, letting Better sit on her extended hind legs, while she grabbed one of his forelegs with her own and waved to me. I silently waved back and glanced back up to a little ceremony on the catwalks. Shift 3's overman, Surefoot, an older pink unicorn with red and pink mane, styled carefully, stood beside Shift 4's overstallion, Rocky Shores, a no-nonsense tan earth pony with a close-cropped graying purple mane. Shift change day was the only time we ever saw more than one overpony. They end the day there in front of everyone, with Shift 3 officially turning over to the stable to Shift 4. Fillies and gentle colts, thank you for another shift complete. Overmare Surefoot's voice rang out in the cavernous room. Another year for us, with everyone safe and sound. The stable in the shape we had left it turned over to us in or better. Sadly, another 10 years for the surface to return to something like the Equestria we left, so we may someday go home. She got up. She got a decent cheer out of that. The hopes of going home kept us going down here, as much as the water talisman and air purifiers and food recyclers, hydroponics gardens, and of course stasis pods in the stable. I casually stretched out and looked around the pod 43, seeing the swishing orange tail in front of the brightly colored 44. Sunset was focusing on her boss's speech, and I couldn't get her attention, which left me staring at her rear, hoping for that. I'm being watched, feeling that the fiery orange tail flickered around, distracting them, along with flanks that were attached to it swishing around. I caught myself blanking out and glanced back up and back to her head. Or her green eyes, rather, as she apparently got into watch feeling quite accurately, and was smirking at me. I flushed and waved innocently before retreating back out of the aisle. I could hear Grizzly nickering ahead as my left to my left as the aisle across the aisle at 53, but refused to give him the satisfaction of looking. Well, just a quick peek. Yep, just as smug as I thought. God damn it. Love the story. The Overmill was wrapping up, hitting the highlights of the year, who got their cutie marks and assigned jobs. Major unexpected repairs in a few which were laid, who were real pain at the time. Holidays and birthday parties, etc. Life during the shift, basically. A recap before we went in. I read somewhere they handled shift change day as a holiday to make the whole process less jarring for us. I mean, really, as far as I was concerned, I'd wake up tomorrow and it would be the same day as today to me. Just in reverse, as we took over the shift too. But having the special work turning over our areas and responsibilities, having a party to a ceremony, all helping instill a sense of time passing. It was designed to reinforce that while it felt like just another day when we woke up, it was actually 10 years later and we had to remember it. Overstallion Shore stepped up while our overmare gracefully left the railing and walked towards the nearby stairs, off the catwalk and down where the rest of us, with the rest of us regally trotting towards Pod 1. I sometimes resented the lavish care and guidelines required to be spent on that pod, but she was our overmare, and she was important. We'd been having trouble without her, no doubt. Still, she wasn't more important than any other pony. If the guides said that the level of care on these machines were required for Pod 1, then they're required for Pods 2 to 100, or 101. This time, I guess, actually that was the one that was important. I woke early, worked fast, and didn't have much else to do. So each of these 100 stasis pods was at their absolute peak. I might not get along that well with the great many of these ponies, but they were all important to me, and I had done my best by them, and prayed to Luna before our big sleep that they would all come through the next 10 years unscathed again. Shift 4 Overstallion was brief and brisk as always. The former Steel Ranger, I had heard once, was able. He was sent through the ceremony because of orders. His orders said so. But he wasn't as personable as Surefoot. Of course, maybe I was wrong. He could get up there and fondly recount the past year Shift 5 took over. And it was just that he had worked to get starting his shift when he dealt with us. Excellent work, Shift 3. The numbers I've seen looked outstanding, and the Shift 4 appreciates your service. You may consider yourselves relieved of your duty. Celestia and Luna guide you through your slumber and back to us again. Dismissed. He belted out curtly before saluting and doing a quick about-face and heading back upstairs. Most of those Shift 4 ponies followed their Overstallions' lead and started filing out, some exchanging goodbyes as well wishes as their one-day-a-year friends. Several shouted down to Sunset before wandering out as she exuberantly answered each other. Down on the Icebox floor, ponies stepped into their pods, helping each other in, waving the portholes above their faces as they were activated, saying goodnight to each other. I walked up to Mom's pod and Dad took as Dad took better, allowing her grudgingly force herself into her pod. She was about to pout on her face and drag out the process of getting settled in and monitors attached. Whinnying, she muttered, "The only good room for flying in this place, and I have to be crammed myself into this tin can in every year." Well, we go through this every year. Through this every year. You fly down here all the time to you. This is the only 5 minutes. You're out again. And you're out again. In this only 5 minutes and you're out again. Watch it with that tin can comments too. I put a lot of work into these things, you know, I told her soothingly as I help her hook up and pull out an auxiliary harness for better. She did relax a bit, and reluctantly laid back, drawing me for a non-life-threatening hug, nuzzling me gently. I know, dear. I know. This whole stable is too confining, though. These 10 marvels of technology are just salt in the wound. It's worth it to be with you, although. She stifled and released me as Dad passed better to her waiting hose, letting me get to work hooking her up. Oh, him up. Dad stepped up into her pod and embraced her, nuzzling and kissing her. He could wait until I didn't have my muzzle in there too, to try to attach the medical monitors to a fussy fool who took it all as a game. It's all right, dear heart. As Fast said, it'll be over in a blink. You're my fearless warrior, Philly, right? I love you so much. Locking yourself down here with us. Someday you'll be back in the open skies, love. Dad could be a real smooth talker when he wanted. Still able to turn Mom's face rosy and make her giggle like a school filly. They nuzzled and whispered to each other happily for a few minutes. Thankfully, I finally finished up and could step away before they really got going. Dad and I both stepped back and waved excitedly, making goofy faces for better as the hatch slid closed and locked with a hiss. We both looked in the porthole and waved as Mom put her hoof on the glass and mouthed, "I love you," over and over. I knew she hated being in there, so as soon as I made a goodbye through the glass, I rushed to start the device, getting her through it as quickly as possible. The spell matrix was up and optimal. Spell talismans were perfect condition, flux levels were topped off. I keyed the sequence and hoofed the big red button, listening intently as the Arcano technology circuits hummed to life and powered up the stasis spell. I jumped back up to the porthole, keeping an eye on the readouts with one eye while barely catching the last words of "I love" before she and better froze in place. Dad and I nudged and shoved each other playfully as we walked up to the aisle for Pod 40. Dr. Oldentimes knew more than enough about the process to not be anxious as Mom. Actually, he probably understood it better than I did. At least, what it did to the ponies inside. I held the lead on the machine as that made it work though. Sighing, he pulled himself into the pod and started attaching his own leads with no trouble, running his own checks on the medical interfaces as he did. I checked those yesterday, Dad. I sighed up at him. He just nodded with a grunt and continued his inspection. Better safe than sorry, son. You know that. I trust you with the machine. I just like checking the parts I know. Okay, good to go, my boy. He asked, pulling me into his own hug. I'm proud of you, son. You're a fine young buck, and I'm sorry you had to grow up here instead of at home. But I'm glad you're here. Oh, you're here, and you're you. Understand? He asked in his deep, soft voice, patting my head. Yeah, Dad, I'm glad. We're here. No, we are here too. We'll maybe not be here, but wait. Well, maybe not here, but together. See you on the other side, okay? I mumbled back, wiping my eyes. Dusty down here. I stepped down quickly as he nodded and started his pod with the same care as Mom's. Jumping back, I waved through the window before he froze as well, mid-wink. Odd. I got the feeling the wink wasn't for me. Then I got a tackle hug from behind by Sunset, who pinned to the pod. Now that you have a family squared, now that you have your family. Now that you have the family squared away, time to get you taken care of, she yelled boisterously, letting me go and bouncing back into the aisle. Most of the other ponies were taken care of now, and there were shift 4 techs to help out, so I guess she was right. Normally I just handle my own pod from the backup controls inside my pickbuck could access. Wave at whoever happened to see me off, if anyone did. It was my job to see everyone safely off to sleep, so I usually didn't have anyone taking care of me. This time, I was okay with the idea though. Walking away from everyone else on shift 3 was as they were sailing up, and going into pod 101 in storage alone was an unpleasant thought. Sunset trotted up to my side, and we started walking towards the storage room 3 at the far end of the aisle, her humming a merry tune at me, feeling anxious. I nodded and waved to Sunset's father. A red stallion smiled at his daughter as she waved and pranced. She then shifted into a suspicious look as he turned to me. Well, he was a single father, and he always been friendly to me, so I suppose it was just like his daughter trotting off alone with any buck. He did sigh and shake his head slowly, his light brown mane shifting as he managed to smile and wave for a send-off. I'll be waiting for you to get fast settled, honey. Don't take too long. I hope you appreciate my daughter fast. Taking time out to make sure you're not alone in that storeroom. He grumbled and passed on. As we passed on, that he passed on it. Yes, sir. He called. I called back. Thanks for letting her come. I appreciate it. Autumn Mist was a nice pony. He had always been a good parent and encouraged my friendship with Sunset when we were foals. I couldn't blame him for this change in attitude now that we were older, but he still did care. He just had to act gruff. Does he give the smolder? No? Okay. I'll be back in 2 shakes, Daddy. Sunset shouted back as we moved away. You're lucky you're getting my personal care fast. Any other book, and I don't think he'd go for it. She snickered. She snickered. Fabulous. I was considered safe and safe-ish, apparently. We both waved and smirked to embarrass Grizz as he was helped into his pod by his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sands, who were loving and doting parents. So they were a lot of hugging, nuzzling, and kissing and crying. They were good, humble Earth Pony folk, and I gave them their privacy After making sure Grizz was at least partially embarrassed anyway, he managed to nod at sunset and reach up to give the hatch of his pod a little tap on the other side of her kiss mark prize, giving a sheepish smile and a wink. Sunset nickered and sauntered along with me, swishing her tail in a farewell flick, flicking me with it occasionally. Yep, next shift would be interesting, all right. I was already mentally preparing for the high wire act of having two friends dating each other. Right next year. Finally, we reached the door, the storage room. My blue-tinted magic reached out to the console and typed in the password winter wrap-up, and the door slid aside. Now that I knew where it was, I could see the dim lights in the pod 101 in the darkness. Before the lights wrapped up and flickered to life, Sunset hadn't been here before, so she trotted forward, inspecting everything while I headed to the pod. Wow. I'm glad I came to see you off now. Shutting yourself up in this thing all alone in there? Sunset shivered a bit. At the last. And I was glad she was my friend. She was right, and I gave her a little shiver. I gave a little shiver myself. I shrugged off my saddlebags and opened the storage bin on the pod, stashing them with my other meager belongings. Sunset shook off the heebie-jeebies and smiled as she pulled out a lipstick, preparing to apply her prize to the hatch of the pod before I opened it. With a loud smack, my pod now had the perfect kiss print under shift 3, 101, which made me suddenly feel better about it. Now that I thought about it, this would have been Better's pod one day, when he was old enough to need his own. If no one died before then, that is. He was the 101st pony in the shift 3, after all. That made me feel even better as I triggered the release and opening the hatch. Sunset watched intently as I crawled into it. Where is it? Since I watched intently as I crawled into it and hooked myself up. I told her I could manage the pod myself, but she insisted on getting to push the big red button. I could monitor and take over the process if I needed to through my pitbuck. But I see it. So I cited her. I cited her the honors, and she squealed in joy, hovering over the tempting shiny red button. All right, ready to seal this thing up, Sunshine? I asked as I rubbed my hooves together over the button. As she rubbed her hooves together over the button. Huh? Oh, sorry, button. No, not yet. Hang on. I need to tell you something. She yelped before tearing herself away from the button and stepped up on the steps leading to the pod, leaning in, nearly touching horns, as her green eyes stared into mine and gave me a sweet smile. Something a little close there, I squeaked as she giggled and shifted. So her forehooves were on either side of my head, and her muzzles stretched up to tickle my ear with her breath. This was getting uncomfortable, or too comfortable. Either way, Sunset, what are you? She cooed in my ear, and I shut up with a shudder. Well, I just wanted you to know. I saw at the end you went fast. And with that, she She turned and gave me a forceful kiss on the cheek and pushed off, jumping back to the floor and hitting the hatch control as she landed. I sat dumbfounded as she appeared to have a small window in front of me, smiling and waving before making the dive towards the big red button. Then there was nothing. Oh, gosh. Emergency protocol I-3902 pod. Number 101. Status. Internal power supply. Disconnected. Internal power supply reserved. 30%. Spell matrix. Operational. Spell talisman. 57% efficiency. Flux reserves. 12%. Eternals integrity. 97%. Stasis integrity. 100%. Outside environment. Stable. Initiate. Automatic purge of subject. Fast times. Male unicorn. Subject. Status. Nominal. Begin automated release procedures. Duration of stasis. 83.7 years. Thank you for using stable tech. Please stand by. Fast times. Level 1. Strength. 4. Perception. 7. Endurance. 4. Charisma. 4. Intelligence. 7. Agility. 9. Luck. 7. Tag skills. Science. Plus 15. Repair. Plus 15. Guns. Plus 15. Traits. Good-natured. You study less combative skills as you were growing up and are a pony of pre-war Equestria. Your combat skills start at a lower level, but your other skills are subsequently improved. Plus 5 to medicine, barter, science, repair, and speech. But minus 5 to guns, magic energy weapons, explosive, and melee, and unarmed. Small framed. You are not quite as big as the other ponies, but that never slowed you down. You can't carry as much, but you are more agile. Plus 1 to agility, but minus 25 to carry weight. Quest perk added. Shift change tournament champion. You are the winner. You knew you got the last can. As the reigning champion, you receive plus 5 chance for critical hits using guns and can sometimes pray for a critical when you need it. Be careful what you wish for, though. Your definition of luck might be different than the universe's. Oh my gosh. That took way longer than I thought it would be. Guys. Now I have to listen to all of this. I want you all to know that I do this because I love you. And because of that, that's the only way I'm going to get through life. With my lies. I want you to know. This is Orator here. Signing off.